All right, everybody, welcome to the Service MVP podcast. My name is Joe Crisara, America's Service Coach, and I'm here today with one of my very special friends, Shreya Nagwani. Shreya, how you doing today? Say hi to our guests.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Joe, for having me on.
Well, my
It's an
pleasure,
honor.
my pleasure. Well overdue, well overdue. I know, Shreya has her own podcast. You want to go ahead and tell us where we can find that?
Yeah, Born for the Trades, a home service podcast. You can find that on Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, or just visit my Facebook page if you want to watch that.
Well, we're here today to talk about three keys to sales success. I know it's one of your passions to be able to be in the sales industry, and I know that you don't think of sales the way a lot of other people think of it. You think of it as a service and things like that. Why don't you tell us first how you got into the sales aspect of this business and contracting specifically?
Yeah. So I've always been in sales really since I was 18 years old. I was in car sales, so known as like the dirtiest sales position that you can
Hmm.
ever have. And really the transition into that was everybody kept telling me, they say you're a natural salesperson just because you're a little bit charismatic. And really quickly I learned that it's not enough to be a natural salesperson
Hmm.
in a position like that. And there's a lot to learn and there's a lot to study about science and psychology and communication. So I got really passionate about that. But there's like a gap, I read probably 100 plus books
Hmm.
by the time I was 20 years old on science and psychology. And it's hard to apply to specifically what you're doing in the field.
Hmm.
And so by the time I joined HVAC, which was a friend of mine just said, hey, you're really miserable in car sales. The culture sucks. I sell HVAC. Come with me and sell HVAC.
Yeah.
And they convinced me to do it because my family, they all sell HVAC and they're all blue collar workers
Hmm.
anyways. So it wasn't too crazy for me to think like
I get
that.
that. I get that.
So when I joined HVAC and I was introduced to your material, it kind of made like all of the books that I ever read and actually applying it in a tangible way in the field a reality for the
Ah,
first time.
so it all
Yeah.
kind of came together as a perfect storm, if you will.
Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly.
Tell us about the challenges being a woman and in this trade. There's, I always say diversity is definitely one of the weaknesses right now. And I think it is to get movement starting to happen where we see people of color and women get more involved with that. Tell us, what are some of the challenges and things that you had to overcome as a woman in this trade, or have you had none? Tell me.
I would say yes. Like, of course, I've had challenges, situations where I've been kicked out of houses because I'm a woman and they can't take me seriously. And, in the trades, like not being taken seriously right off the bat, like it's some sort of gimmick. I think that's how it was seen
Hmm.
when I would walk into a home. That's really the biggest one. I like to focus on the positive. So I kind of have an unpopular opinion. I think about that just based on my own experience, not really speaking for any other women in the trades or anything like that. But I've been really warmly welcomed into the trades
Oh,
and I've
great.
had a lot of support. I don't feel like I've been discriminated against. Even if I have for a moment, it just means that I have to prove myself more, and I've been able to do that. So as long as there's the knowledge and the experience to back it up, after the fact, just like when those people try to kick me out of their houses, I would fight to stay in the house. I wouldn't get offended or take it personally. I would just agree and understand and just let them know, hey, just let me earn the job from you. Let me
Hmm.
show you that I can do what everybody else can do. And they ended up being even more interested in me and happier at the end of the call. And we were able to just get the job done that way. So I treat everything like that now.
Well, I remember when you were in my class, it was a Zoom class that you were in, and then you actually came to live when you come to several classes of
Oh,
ours,
yeah.
and we couldn't get up the first time. You came a second time live. But one thing I did strike me is your level of optimism. I would say it's like there's a lot of barriers that we see in front of us. Both not just women, but everybody's got the same barriers. Most of the barriers we have are all the same.
Yeah.
Just a few more for women because it's like you said, the expectation is a little different gimmick, like you want to say that, right? Uh, Talk us about where do you get that sense of optimism from? Where's that stem from? The sense of optimism where you see the good in most of what's going on out there. What do you think?
I would say that a lot of it has to do with the literature I read too. The literature I read, I would say, is a lot of mindset stuff. right? So, like, pretty much whatever you think is your reality. So, if I focus on how I have it so bad and so hard, I probably will because that's all I can see in my
Hmm.
perspective. So, I've kind of like tried to train my own mindset to only see the positive, where I see, being a woman or woman of color in the industry as actually my biggest asset
Hmm.
rather than a detriment to me. And because I see it that way, I believe it's just been that way for me, just because that's what I believe.
Well, it definitely is a true differentiator, no doubt about it. It's up to you to make it a positive differentiator. That's, I guess, the thing about it. I think so many people focus on the deficit or the challenge, and they're not focused on getting past the challenge and what's on the other side of it. And you do a great job of that. So,
Thank you.
congratulations on that.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Let's go on to the three keys of sales success so people can get some real content here. So we can, there's a lot of people out there driving around listening to their truck to this and their cars and grinding it out like you used to do in the attics and crawl spaces and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the things that, as a sales professional, especially in the blue collar trade specifically, people selling water heaters, garage doors, furnaces and ACs, and just landscaping, all different kinds of things. What's the first key that you think it has to take to really become successful in this business?
Emotional intelligence. I
Ah,
would
that's a good
say
one.
the key words. Yeah, emotional
Hmm.
intelligence. Not just talking about, the technical aspects to the job, but how that affects their family, right? Which is literally what the process you teach is teaching technicians or teaching men how to communicate with emotional intelligence, which you cannot do sales without it. It's
Hmm.
it's kind of interchangeable. I don't believe that you can even have any success in sales without understanding that part of it.
I think the manufacturers and most of the training centered around all the technical differences or the benefits of all the technical parts of the solution, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's an emotional aspect of it as well too. Could you give us a little bit more on that? Because I think it's a great. I agree with you, of course, that I believe that all sales are emotional, even ones that seem logical. It's because somebody's trying to show you how smart they are to get the best thing they want to get, right? But
Totally.
tell us about. Give us an example, if you can, about how that kind of springs into place. It's emotional intelligence. A lot of men out there, so they don't understand that, like I didn't,
Obviously,
you
yeah.
know. So we don't. So try and dumb it down for the guys,
All right.
if you don't mind. Uh,
Emotional intelligence for dummies.
how would you how would you give that? How would that manifest itself, or what does that look like? To give us an example, so they can kind of get that aha moment if you're talking to a bunch of people who didn't quite understand that.
Sure. Just like it's emotional intelligence for dummies, I would think of it like HVAC options for dummies, an HVAC system for dummies, because we forget we're not talking to technicians in the home.
Mhm.
We're not talking to anybody with any prior experience in HVAC, but we talk to them like they're other technicians. And we use technical jargon like SEER ratings and CFM, so on and so forth.
BTUs, yeah.
BTUs, and I get it. Like, I used to speak that way. I don't even have that natural inclination of emotional intelligence. To me, it was a learned skill,
Mhm.
just like men usually learn it, to be completely honest. So it's those things throwing that out the window. SEER ratings, just call it high efficiency,
Mhm.
right? And really, what's most important is the effect on the family.
Mhm.
Like, what kind of relationship did I build that I can connect that to what they said earlier?
So,
So,
so high efficiency,
mhm,
which would then logically save you money.
right?
And what's the emotional aspect of that? You can say, how can you connect that dot to saving money for the family? Tell us, how would you finish that sentence?
Right. So spending more time with their family because they're saving money, going on a vacation, right? So on and so forth, like saving for college. Like there's so many things that I would keep it though specific to what that person told you
Mm.
and not have a general
Yeah.
assumption of what they would use the money for in the relationship building with that
Mm.
client. So even something like SEER rating could be transferred to high efficiency, transferred to in a more emotional way
Helping your
within.
daughter, helping your daughter buy the books for her college so she can feel cared for when she's at that university,
Yeah,
something
because
like
you
that.
mentioned earlier that, you're really excited for her to go to Harvard, right? It's
Oh
like,
my goodness, yeah, she needs that money. For sure. I mean, we can't buy Harvard, but we at least buy a few books for her.
Right.
Maybe we get all the books at Harvard, but some of the books, right? That's
Exactly.
interesting.
Yeah.
It's some of it is kind of funny, right? Because and that is emotional too when you're getting people to laugh and enjoy the conversation. What emerges is to me, this is the person I can trust with my money. Like this kind of person that I know is going to be handle the project because if they can handle this kind of communication, that they can do that. Make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great stuff. Well, that is a great first step. And if you want more on emotional intelligence, you can always check out servicemvp.com. We have that connecting to find the code. A great place to start learning there. Shreya, what's number two, the second thing we can do for sales success? What would you say?
I would say sincerity or integrity.
Hmm. Tell us about that. Sincerity or integrity, or and integrity.
And
It's both
integrity.
of them.
Kind of
Uh,
one and
mhm.
the same like arena there.
Yeah, they say authenticity is like a new superpower of today that people can really, with everybody on TikTok and their own TV reality shows, we can see what really is a reality, and sometimes we can see what's really staged or something like that. Even on Twitter, it's like, oh, that was staged. There's no way the cameras could all be set up, and this would be people doing that on TV. There are a lot of people who fall for that kind of stuff. But talk about how that works in a sales environment. How does that authenticity or that integrity could be brought to a customer? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I just kind of have a belief that a process is dead without that center of it. It's kind of like the heart that makes it come alive, right? Because if I'm saying something and it's not true, um, sales, I believe, is a transference of belief. I have to have a deep belief about it in order to transfer it to another person. So if I'm saying, that I want to get this job done for you and your family because I care about you so much and
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to give you bad service and all of those things, and I just want you to have the best job for you and your family, and I'm not really trying to push them towards a specific option or coerce them into buying something, I really need to mean that. Because I've seen the difference between the two.
Yeah,
It's like the, pure motive service, right? Like with Rick Bacard
yeah.
mentioned that before. That's the most important ingredient is the authenticity of telling the truth while you're
Hmm.
doing this, truly believing it. People can feel that, and there's a lot of science behind people knowing whether you're lying or, telling the
Yeah,
truth to
yeah, yeah.
them.
I think most people are their own human lie detector because you can see when people communicate something that is a lot of maybes or probablys in the weakling. Can you go a little bit of how you can kind of see when somebody's not authentic because they kind of identify it themselves in a way when they talk?
Yeah, yeah, you could definitely see when someone's not authentic. Like I could say, "Hey, I just want to do good service for you guys," right? And really believe that. And let's say I've seen another person say what I'm saying verbatim, or even doing total immersion, right? Like reading the system, learning new ways to communicate. It feels wrong.
Hmm.
Like you could feel it. It seems like forceful and it seems like you're coercing someone when maybe I do it or somebody else does it, they're saying the same things, but you could really sense the tone and the eagerness of trying to get somebody to do something they don't want to do.
Hmm.
Where, yeah, you have verbatim the same words, the same sentences, but they feel completely different. And one person I feel defensive towards.
Hmm.
Like I don't want to be around them, and I don't like their tone, and I kind of want them out of my house. And the other person, I for some reason they seem really familiar,
Hmm.
and I really like them. You know?
Would you say that authenticity and integrity is something that it can be a trained situation that can be done in training, or is that something that you either born with and you have it or you don't have it?
That's such a good question. That's like my favorite question
Hmm.
because this is something that I probably get asked the most
Hmm.
is, well, they just don't want to do it or they just don't feel that way. I 100% believe that it's trainable to be authentic
Hmm.
even. Emotional intelligence is trainable. Charisma, you can train somebody to have charisma. It's just a mix of a few different traits, right? Which is empathy, directness, right? And certain things like that. And it's trained in communication and mindset training. It's
Hmm.
just like if you think about yourself, there's a time in your life where you read a book, you watched a movie, you met an influence of yours, and your mindset changed forever on a certain subject. And you used to be a different way, right? But now you have this new perspective on life and on business or finances or your family or whatever it is, right? Why wouldn't it be different to produce that in training?
Mm, that's great. You got a great answer. Uh, it was a great question, but also a great answer. Well, I think we both did great. High five. So, let's move on.
Could
Let's
go
move on.
5 minutes
Let's move on to the next. Just talk about that. Anyway, let's go on to the next slide. Number three? What's the third thing to sales success? Let's go on to that. What's the third thing
I
you
would
think?
say the third and final thing is accountability.
Hmm.
I'm responsible for the result of my work, right?
Hmm.
And that's probably the hardest thing. Why it's number three is emotional intelligence, authenticity, and then accountability of, the results of my jobs. I cannot blame it on the world anymore.
Hmm.
If I'm a real salesperson and I take this seriously, it's that whatever the result is, there is something that I could have done better,
Hmm.
right? And I remember being in the field and I remember calling you about my successes, right?
Hmm.
Like I sold 100,000 a day. Aren't you proud of me? And all of this. And what I really appreciate most about you is the extreme accountability. Even when I'm celebrating something, like you're like, okay, but what did you do wrong? Like,
No, I said,
not like
really,
that,
how many options did you give?
right?
Tell me what was the top option? How was what was included in the top option? Like I wasn't just, I didn't pay attention to the result. I want to make sure the process was done right. Make sense?
Well, I did five this time, or I did four this time,
So
right?
I said, oh, well, you're almost there. It's like, but I sold the job. It's like, well, that's nice. Good. I'm glad. Yay. Now let's do it right next time.
Right.
Imagine what we would have sold if we did it right. It's always funny like that. I think that's it. Well, so accountability isn't what people think. It's not the end of something. Sometimes accountability is in the middle of something where like, yeah, it's not finished yet. Accountability means that the person might think it's finished. I'm done with this thing. I sold this job, but I'm really not done because I haven't really looked and debriefed myself as to what I could have done better, even when I did sell something, right? You think that's the difference between the premium salesperson and the average salesperson? That the premium person just never happy even when they win. Like they're always thinking about what I could have still done better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. They persevere through that. They're always looking on where they can learn, like Rick Picard, right? Like that. I keep using him as an example because he's probably one of my greatest examples using this system, and having that emotional intelligence, that authenticity, and he has the accountability. So he's like the perfect representation of somebody really having those three things
Yeah,
and
exactly.
utilizing that to get the results that he
Yeah,
does.
it's like when you watch the Super Bowl, there are some coaches and teams that act like that's it. We won the Super Bowl. Let's go to Disney World. It's all
Right.
over. And there's like Bill Belichick from the New England Patriots who's like, yeah, but we have a really bad draft pick next year, so I don't know what we're going to do there. We got to get back to work, guys. And so
Totally.
at the press conference in the Super Bowl, he's not even celebrating. He's just thinking about what we got to do to get back to work, to get back here. We're not going to get back here unless we get back to work right now, the day after the Super Bowl. So he,
Totally.
he goes right back to work on it. He doesn't go to Disney World, I don't think, or does Disneyland either,
No.
stuff like that. So the accountability, it's a mixed bag in that part of it there. Well, I have a question for you. Now you must be in high demand. Obviously, you're on the Grow Nearby, with Grow Nearby with Mandeep Bala with your Born for the Trades podcast, and you go to all these major events, and you're one of the stars of the events. You're always want to be. People are asking you to speak and things like that. How many times have you been recruited this year? Would you say?
I don't even know if I could count the amount of times, honestly. I would just like estimate like maybe like 15,
Hmm.
20.
What keeps somebody like you on this track that and doesn't get distracted by those other things? There's an allure, if you will, of something always greater, but you still stay here and grind it out and help all of our internal clients as well as our external clients. I think everybody gets a sense of care, respect, and support when they call you, right? And
Yeah.
they don't feel like there's something else you're focusing on other than them.
Yeah.
Tell us, how do you maintain that kind of a focus?
This is like a very specific niche that I'm very passionate for, and it's here, right? So, the system, my experience with it, I have a very deep emotional connection with this and watching clients discover it,
Hmm.
right? Very specifically. And two is this goes back into the salesperson conversation. There's a lot of great salespeople that are shop hoppers, right? Where they hop around and they just sell everywhere. And it goes back to accountability. It's like if you are really a expert salesperson or that's what you want to be, you'll be able to do that wherever you are, as long as you believe in what you're selling. And that is really the real answer to that is I believe in it, and there's nothing better, uh, even better than me discovering the system and finding success out of it and financial freedom is watching other people find it. It's actually way more satisfying, and I get to watch that on a daily basis.
I always say that when we ever give things to people like that, we get more from that gift than we are giving. Truthfully, I think we get more
Yeah.
from it, and just the good feeling that you get when you see other people succeed based on your influence. It's you can't put it can't write a check for that, as they say, right? And that
As
part of
they
it there,
say.
as they say, as I would say, right? Well, again, if you want to see Shreya. On one of her amazing podcasts, her and Mandeep. I'm actually envious. Sometimes she has some really great guests. I'm like, well, let's get the person who's got all the great guests on our show. We have her today, so I got a really great guest for myself here today. But you can go to. You want to tell people how to get there, Shreya? What's it? Just make sure they got it again.
Yeah, I would say Born for the Trades, a home service podcast. I would Google it, and it's on a lot of different platforms. But if you want to reach out to me directly about Service MVP and, just have a conversation, even if you're out in the field and you want to call and ask a question and you want some help, those are honestly my favorite type of calls. So just reach out to me on Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook or on Service MVP, we have a little chat button there. If you want to ask for Shreya, she'll be right there. She'll be amazed that somebody asked for her because you're like, oh my gosh, somebody asked for me. It's amazing. I'm wanted, so that's great. All right, guys, have a great one. Everybody, let me just say thank you for joining us here on this podcast. And Shreya, thanks for making this really one of the best downloads we're ever going to have. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it.